You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengels.
Hey, George, welcome back to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Now, that was some football on Sunday.
I'll tell you what, there was a line from Zaire Franklin on Wednesday that I thought was really telling, where he said it had been a long time since he, had kind of had that hopeless feeling and then watched the quarterback just kind of take over the game, win the game for them. And I think that's where all the hope's coming from right now. That was an outstanding performance by your 22-year-old quarterback at a time when he absolutely needed one. And this team absolutely needed it. You had a 3-game losing streak. We know the chaos of the past really month around here. For him to go out and play like that, it doesn't guarantee them anything moving forward. I don't think anybody's saying that. But for the first time in a long time, it feels like there's a little direction here and a little reason to hope with this franchise.
I absolutely agree. I think the Colts fans who thought Richardson should have been benched, I think maybe we got a little, what's the opposite of jaded? With Peyton Manning, and we just assume that our quarterback's going to be perfect every week or something.
And we've been spoiled.
Yeah.
As a fan base, as a media group around here, you had Peyton Manning, you had Andrew Luck, who had an unbelievable rookie year, and until the injuries started settling in, was really good. And even, early on in the post-Andrew Luck era, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. When you have somebody come in like Phillip Rivers and play at the level that he had played at, this franchise hadn't really struggled at quarterback until the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it was just, I think, what we, expected, hoped for from Anthony Richardson, especially that fourth quarter. The combination of running and throwing and just being impossible to deal with was really good to see.
Yeah, and as always, it's not one guy. I mean, he had to play better. There's no question that's where it starts. The wide receivers, I thought, had an outstanding game. They made a lot of plays for him, which helps this situation. In particular, Josh Downs, who's becoming a very, very good player in this league. And I think you see the chemistry between them, and you see that starting to pay off on the field. That's something that also provides excitement and hope. But also Shane Steichen, I thought this was one of his best games of the year in terms of the way he called the offense, getting Anthony Richardson involved with his leg, sticking with the run even when it wasn't working. We'd seen so many times this year, hey, if that run game doesn't work, boom, the whole second half they're just throwing. And that obviously puts the offensive line in a tougher spot. It puts the quarterback in a tougher spot. They were able, the run game did not produce the way you would want it to, but it kept the Jets honest enough that Anthony Richardson was able to have a pocket and make plays from that pocket. And so I thought it was, I give a lot of credit to Anthony Richardson because we saw him grow up a lot that day. Now he's got to do it week after week after week. We all know that. But that was a really encouraging, easily the best start of his career, easily. And then I think Shane Steichen deserves a lot of credit for coming out and really using him the way that we all kind of thought he should be used all year.
Absolutely. I know after a win, sometimes the negatives get lost, but the offensive line was pretty bad, I thought, on Sunday. Maybe their worst performance of the year. To be fair, I can still not figure out how the Jets are so bad. Their defensive line is really darn good. Their defense is really good. It should be. At least they have the pieces of a good defense. But the offensive line, what's the health situation there?
Yeah, that is a real sticking point right now. And it really wasn't just last week. I mean, they've really been struggling this, 2 games before Anthony Richardson got benched, the 2 games that Joe Flacco played, and then against the Jets. And there's obvious reasons, right? I mean, we know you lose your left tackle. That's always going to be difficult. And I think Matt Gonsalves actually probably has done a decent job considering the situation he's in, but it's still a big drop off from Ryman and what you expect there. You've got, a rookie center in there who's playing well, but I don't know. You never know for sure what you lose without Ryan Kelly in there as far as communication goes, both, with the rest of the line and with the quarterback. And, that's something you got to be in the huddle to really know how that's affecting them. And then, Dalton Tucker is an undrafted guy who came in, had a great run in the spring and in summer and started off pretty well. But as tends to happen with these younger guys, there's film on him now. He's facing some really incredible opponents week in and week out, and he's starting to struggle. And you've seen the Colts go and sign Mark Glowinski earlier today, and that's something I think is going to be really interesting to keep an eye on. He's only on the practice squad right now. We'll see how long it takes for him to get up and running, but they're clearly concerned about that right guard spot, and they should be. As far as the health goes, I haven't yet. Here we are at 4. It should just be coming out any minute now on the injury report today, but Bernhard Raimann did not practice Wednesday. So he's still in questionable. And as long as he's out, we know that there's still 2 more weeks with Ryan Kelly on the IR. He won't be back until after the bye at the earliest. So those rookies are still in there for a little while. And I would imagine, unless Raimann makes it back this week, you're probably going to have 3 rookies again on the offensive line Sunday against the Lions. That's always going to be difficult. You saw it, I thought, in the run game in particular on Sunday. But Anthony Richardson's been under too much pressure too. Now, he has some superhuman things he does to negate some of that, but it'd still be nice not to ask him to do it quite so often.
We'll talk about the Lions here in a second, but I thought Jalen Johnson was outstanding on Sunday. Is there buzz around there about him?
Yeah, I mean, there was last year, and I think he's really taking it another level now. Obviously, coming into this year, the corners were one of the biggest question marks. And I think all spring long, the question being asked by everybody was, what are they going to do to add to that group? They're young, they're inexperienced. And
we
to see Jalen go in. Yeah, well, absolutely. And it was the question to be asked. And really, the way Jalen's come out and played this entire season has answered a lot of that. And you do wonder if they can get Juju Brents back and he can be the guy that he was drafted to be, which is a lot of ifs. But we've seen it happen with Anthony Richardson. So, we'll see what happens at that spot too. That corner spot goes from a major question mark to an area that you feel pretty good about. I mean, Samuel Womack as that 3rd/4th, depending on he's second outside guy right now. He'd become the 3rd outside guy, but Kenny Moore fits into that mix too. That's not a bad group. And I think it's been much better than anybody thought it would be coming into the season. But it starts with Jalen and his ability to just shake everything off. I mean, he's a guy that he's not perfect. He's going to, at that position, you're going to make mistakes. You're on an island. You're going to get burnt, from time to time in this league. Talent these receivers have, these quarterbacks have. But he's one of those guys, and he's proven it. And in his 2 short years in the league, he's one of those guys that has that short memory and that can just come back and say, I'm going to beat you the next play. And he's won way more than he's lost. For a 7th-round pick, I don't know if you could ask for any more than what you've gotten out of him for 2 years. And he's been their best corner this year, which is saying a lot because Kenny Moore has played well. But Kenny Moore's in the slot. And he's asked to do some different things.
Right.
Week in and week out, they have gotten way better play from a 7th-round pick than you could ever hope to expect.
And the defensive backs tackle.
Yes.
There were a lot of positives, I thought. The defensive line, I thought, played pretty well. I really enjoyed your notebook piece on Kwity Paye. That was very, very insightful. But yes, a lot of positives on the defensive front too, I thought.
Yeah, and that's where it all starts with this team. I don't think there's any secret with that. When the front 4 is good and when they're strong, the defense is good. And they closed that game out. And the defense had their issues in that game. There's no question about it, especially in the second half. Right there before the end of the first half, all the way really till probably the second part of the 4th quarter, they were really kind of struggling. And that I thought was also encouraging. Not that they were struggling. That part's not encouraging. But they were able to shake that off. And when they really had to get a stop, they made that red zone stop and forced a field goal, which allowed the offense to go down and take the lead. And then, I don't know about you, but I would imagine, I know I was, and I imagine a lot of other people watching that game were thinking, this is plenty of time for Aaron Rodgers to get in the field goal range. And we've seen him do it even this year. I know he's not the same quarterback he was.
Right.
Even this year, we've seen him do that. You even had a self-inflicted wound in there with the penalty on EJ Speed that was inexcusable. You can't do in that situation. But they were able to go and get that sack to end the game. That to me is really encouraging because you're going to have adversity in this league. And to see the defense kind of shake off what had been a bad stretch and shake off a bad penalty during that last drive and not let the Jets get what do they need, like 30 or 40 yards. It wasn't a major ask. That I think that was another really encouraging thing, and it was led by that front four.
Probably if you said anybody in their prime who's the scariest when there's 2 minutes to go and time's running down. Aaron Rodgers, man, woo, that guy was scary. But yeah, he's not the same guy, but he's still pretty good. So,
and they only needed 3. That to me is always the big difference. When you've got to get the touchdown, it's tougher.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the Lions because, they look good.
That is an understatement. There's some history being made up there right now in Detroit.
Yes.
They've got, I think, 3 wins already of 35 points or more, which I don't think has happened since like the 1970s.
Jared Goff doing things no quarterback's ever done in the history of the NFL. Crazy.
He's throwing more touchdowns than incompletions on a regular basis.
Yeah, crazy.
And the thing about it is when you think about high scoring offenses, and this is what I'm writing about today, depending on what era you're from and what your age is, guys like Dan Marino are going to come to mind, Kurt Warner, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. And you have this vision of, like, for me, it's always the greatest show on turf, because that Rams team, was really when I was first getting into the business, and they were unstoppable. And the Lions can do that, and they definitely have that in their bag, but they are so physical. They're unlike any of those other teams that we've seen. We always talk about a team taking on the personality of their head coach. This team reflects Dan Campbell in every imaginable way. And it's just, I think that makes them even more difficult, because you've got to worry about everything you have to worry about with the explosive passing games. They're going to run the ball on you. They're going to push you around up front. There's a reason this team's been as dominant as it is. And in my mind right now, hey, it's November, so things change. In my mind right now, they're the favorites to win the Super Bowl.
I would agree with you, except for the Lions. So
that's the other issue.
Yeah, last year they were ahead in the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship game, and not for 1 second did I ever think they were going to win that game. As a kid who grew up as a Lions fan, cheering for Billy Sims, I just expect the bad things to happen. So, but they've been good, and it's still the regular season, so yeah, I expect the best out of them. Chances of the Colts going up there and winning that one?
I tell you, the one thing that you kind of hang your hat on is intangible, and it might even be nonsense in some ways, but it just seems to happen. I think you go back to like 2019, every year there's been a game the Colts were not supposed to win.
No doubt.
That everybody had them written off on, and that they won. And there's none more like that left this year. I mean, after this, the schedule opens up a little bit. They're not going to win every game the rest of the year necessarily.
Right.
But there's no more games left that you look at it on the schedule and you think, this is going to take a perfect effort to win on Sunday after this one with the Lions. So they're going to need a lot to go their way. They're going to need Jared Goff to have a rare off day. They're going to have to get pressure on him. They're going to have to stop the run. They're going to have to be explosive on offense, but they're going to have to be efficient on offense as well. They're going to need to control the time of possession, which they hardly ever do. There's a lot of things that are going to need to break their way, but we've seen that happen before. I'm interested to see what the atmosphere is going to be like at Lucas Oil, because the last time they were at home, that was one of the worst home games I have ever been a part of. And I've got an app that I think said I've been there 175 times now. So I've seen a few, and that game, in terms of the split in the crowd, where there being so many Buffalo fans there, that the Bills were able to fire up the crowd when they were on defense in the second half of that game. And then, the crowd being so angry with good reason and booing as much as they were with good reason. I just want to see how much of that's turned around. I mean, the Lions, I would expect there to be a pretty good sampling of Lions fans at that game again on Sunday. How will the Colts fans respond? Will they get run out of their own stadium like they did 2 weeks ago? And will the Colts give them reason enough to fight back? It's one of the things I want to watch on Sunday.
If they can win this one, they are set up perfectly down the stretch.
There's no doubt about that. If you find a way to win this game, your playoff chances go through the roof. But I think even with a loss, as long as you grow from this game and you're competitive, the offense continues taking steps forward. The defense doesn't get completely, it's not 52-6, nothing like that. I think after this, there's games that are going to be tough. I think the Patriots have been a little bit more competitive lately than they were maybe most of the year. The Broncos game might be the most important game of the season. It's not that the rest of the season is going to be walkovers.
No.
But I think these next 5, they've got a chance to make a run if they can continue to improve and they can continue to get the version of Anthony Richardson they got Sunday against the Jets.
Way to bring it around, George. Thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate it. It's always fun talking some Colts, especially when they were as entertaining as they were last week.
It's nice to be able to talk about some happy things for once instead of, the last month or so.
It was 3 straight weeks of almost all negative. So this has been a lot of fun, George.
Thanks again to George Bremer for being gracious with his time. And thank you for listening. Always appreciate it. Please go like, subscribe, or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or SoundCloud. And tell a friend. Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media.